Has Jaguar fired its creative agency? Was Copy Nothing really disastrous for the brand? The answer is more complicated than you might think. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Car. I'm Utkarsh coming to you from Singapore. For the purpose of this video, I am a branding executive with a lot of experience and having worked on some iconic brands, which you'll see. Now, a few months ago, when this campaign came out, I looked at the campaign through the lens of a branding executive, and I evaluated it to be rather poor. You can check out the details here. So it seems pretty obvious that the next step would be that the company will fire the agency because they made such a horrible campaign. All the customers hated it, so to speak. It seems to be a disaster. It definitely got caught up in the culture wars. What I want to tell you is that reality is a little bit more complex than that. And I want to draw on some experience of a similar rebrand that was not something I did, but it was this iconic rebrand of an iconic brand. And I had, if not, I was not in the arena doing the rebrand, but I had a very good spectator's view, right front row view of that. Which brand? You can check out my LinkedIn history and it's very clear which brand and when. So what I'll tell you is things are more complex. First, let's read the headline, right? And I'm opening up something by Campaign Asia. Jaguar Land Rover has launched a review of its global creative account. Accenture Song is the incumbent. Their contract runs with JLR runs till 2026. What is Jaguar, or rather, what is Jaguar Land Rover themselves saying about it? Do they have anything to say about this? They basically said they do not comment. As a matter of policy, Jaguar Land Rover does not comment on supplier arrangements. They're under contract. So what does it look like? It looks very straightforward, slam dunk. Copy Nothing disastrous campaign, company is firing it. But is that really what is going on? And is it really a disastrous campaign? Well, I'll tell you that a few things that will surprise you when you're looking at it through the lens of how companies make decisions, how executives justify decisions, how this entire ecosystem works at a higher level inside a corporate. Right, now to be clear, I think it's a terrible campaign. I think the two videos that I made on it, where I laid it out from a marketing principle standpoint, made it very clear. But let's think about what's going on. Let's think about how do companies really work. What's happening over here is you have a head of marketing and you have a head of agency or whoever is the person in charge of the agency who have made a very, very bold campaign, which is very different to anything the brand has done earlier. They have made a very bold decision. Whether the decision turned out well or not, it's a very bold decision. So it is their baby. It is something that has been pushed through the system because generally companies do not abandon their brand equity, do not abandon everything, right? You push something bold through, it takes a lot of internal selling in a company to get it through the system. And then when you have got so much invested, when you've put yourself behind, you've put your agency behind it, you put your own reputation behind it, there's a lot of invested human capital, your own reputation in the line. As a senior manager, people generally do not stick their necks out. And if they do, they cannot just say I was wrong immediately, because it's like an admission of being, and especially with something as bold as this, it's usually not what people do, because it's like almost like an admission of incompetency. So what would you do? What would a senior manager, a senior marketing person do? And again, as I've said, I've seen certain things happen, which I can't comment directly on for obvious reasons. What they would say. So as a marketing person, how do you evaluate if a campaign is doing well? There are very simple metrics. These are measurable metrics. You may think it's about how much positive comments you may get on YouTube, or negative comments or views or whatever. Essentially, how you measure it is through your brand equity score and a brand equity study. And what you measure in your brand equity study is, firstly, you measure top of mind awareness, which means how many people mention your product or your brand when you ask about the category. So if I ask you, can you name a car company? How often does Jaguar come up in that? Now, post this campaign, what do you think has happened? Does Jaguar come up more often or less often when people are asked about a car company? I bet it's coming up more often. So from a pure marketing standpoint, if I was making the argument that this campaign has been successful, I'll say, hey, my top of mind awareness has gone up. If previously Only 20% of people had top of mind awareness of Jaguar. Maybe now it's 40% because it's been so much in the news, right? This was massively in the news. Then there is, in general, aided awareness and unaided awareness. Unaided awareness is you ask somebody, name all the car companies you know. They give a list of names. And if you're in that list, you have unaided awareness. Has Jaguar's unaided awareness gone up with this campaign? Probably yes. Of course, it's been in the news. Aided awareness. You give person a list of companies, a person gives a list of companies they know. Then you ask them, oh, do you know this company as well? Maybe you ask them, have you heard of BYD, for example? Or have you heard of Tesla, for example? And they're like, yeah, I didn't mention it, but I've heard of these companies. That's aided awareness. Has Jaguar's aided awareness gone up? Probably a little bit as well. So what I'm trying to tell you is, from an awareness metric, which is a huge metric that companies use to measure programs, this campaign has been very successful. Again, I must reiterate that in my opinion, which I've shared earlier, from a brand equity standpoint, this campaign is utterly destructive. It's a terrible idea. It abandoned equity. It kind of vacated the space that Jaguar had a certain equity. It vacated that space and didn't fill it up with anything meaningful. So I don't like it, but I'm just trying to tell you that as a executive, trying to justify my job and my existence and everything, this is an argument that I could make, that, hey, I've raised awareness. Then we talk about other things. We talk about total number of impressions that a brand is getting, right? Remember this, marketers, companies buy impressions in advertising. We pay for it. This is how companies like YouTube or Alphabet or Facebook or Meta, that's where their valuations come from, because advertisers pay money to buy impressions. Why is it all free for you? Because when you watch YouTube, you get advertising, and to get that impression, to get that advertisement in front of your face, the company pays money. That's how the ecosystem works. So again, as a person working, if I was trying to justify why this campaign was successful, I would talk about all the free impressions, all the people covering this, Jaguar's gone mad, blah, 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 etc. Saying that, look at this, previously Jaguar had so many impressions, now Jaguar, we got this much paid impressions, but we got so many free impressions from all the coverage that we got. So from an awareness and an impression standpoint, there is no doubt numerically that this campaign is a success. That said, the most important point is this. Generally, and as I talked about in my video on the marketing principles, impression is good, awareness is good, but there's one very important thing. Are you creating a positive response to your brand? Are you creating positive equity? Are you creating equity of the kind that could inspire action of purchase? And I think the answer to these three questions for Jaguar is a resounding no. Because as far as I can tell, and of course it's all qualitative, is that it has created an extremely negative impression amongst existing aware people who are aware of Jaguar already. And for new people who are not aware of Jaguar, it's not created any particular impression, because as I talked about in the video earlier, this campaign is not particularly distinctive as a campaign. It is distinctive because it is so abrasively different from Jaguar. But if you replace Jaguar with a fashion label or a skincare, it's a very boring, stupid campaign. Sorry for that. Pardon my French there, but sorry, my opinion on the campaign keeps getting through because I find it I like Jaguar as a brand. I'm a petrol head, even though I'm wearing a BMW M, which is a total accident. I like Jaguar. So I really find that so allow my emotion about the brand to affect my analysis a little bit. What I'm trying to say is, I don't see this campaign as having created a new breed of Jaguar fans to replace the Jaguar fans who've already been annoyed. So that's where, for me, this campaign has created such a negative response to brand, which is likely to have a negative impact in terms of sales, that is not a successful campaign. But guess what? Jaguar is not selling any cars right now. Jaguars have decided to go all electric, so they stopped selling cars earlier this year. So how do you measure this negative response to brand? Yes, you can put it's a secondary measure. After awareness, you can have overall favorability of the brand, so on and so forth. But these are second degree measures. And as a seasoned marketer, I can assure you that if this is a conversation that I'm having, there's an argument that can be made that, hey, I've driven awareness up, people are talking about the brand, top of mind awareness, everything that I talked about is up, talkability is up. There's a slight, it could be positioned as, hey, there is a slight issue in the particular campaign or in the particular execution. Execution is a word that executives love to use when they don't want to abandon the idea, but they don't you don't like this particular ad or this particular line. We like the overall spirit, but the execution is not great. So what I'm trying to tell you is that this whole thing can easily be packaged in an internal boardroom discussion as a resounding success, or a success with some rough edges that need smoothing over. So when they say that the agency is going under review, I don't necessarily think it is a consequence of this. It could be. Again, I am not an insider in the Jaguar company, and if I was, I couldn't be talking about it. But it is entirely possible that this is part of a regular review. In fact, most companies do reviews of their advertising agencies quite regularly. I did one every year when I worked in my previous job. Right? It could just be that it's a regular review that happens every year, and it's been picked up by the media and positioned in the headlines as if they've gotten fired. No, it's just a review. Every year, I do a review with my agency every year. Of course, the company that I worked with and the brand that I worked with did indeed fire its agency many years ago to a different agency, but that was a rare event. There's a lot of ecosystem involved, right? When you have a creative agency and everything associated with it, you have an entire ecosystem of a branding team all integrated together. It's not easy, and it's not a decision you take lightly. It's not like switching from one brand of bottled water to another brand of bottled water for your pantry. It's more complicated than that. So what I'm trying to say is that while I really did not like the Jaguar rebrand campaign, and I think it was terrible for the brand, I think that there is a way that a smart executive can position it as a success due to the awareness and the talkability that it created, even though it was all negative. And hence, it is my opinion that it is entirely possible that the agency is not really on the cusp of being fired. This is just a regular review. All right, folks, let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.